In the heart of a bitter winter, when the world seemed wrapped in a shroud of relentless cold and despair, an elderly woman with a spirit as enduring as the ancient trees surrounding her found herself trekking through the snow-laden forest. The morning light was weak, filtered through a dense gray sky that promised nothing but more of the biting chill. As she carefully navigated the slippery, frost-covered ground, her breath puffed out in small clouds, and the sound of her footsteps was muffled by the thick blanket of snow. Amidst the eerie silence that blanketed the forest, a soft, desperate whimper caught her attention, a sound so faint it could easily be mistaken for the whisper of the wind. DM paused, her heart quickening with a mixture of concern and curiosity. The sound led her deeper into the forest, where the trees stood like silent sentinels, their limbs weighed down by ice. Every step forward was a battle against nature's icy grip, yet her determination drove her on. At the base of a towering, gnarled oak, partially obscured by a heavy curtain of frost, DM discovered the source of the haunting sound. There, huddled against the cold and seemingly forgotten by the world, was a large German shepherd. Its once noble eyes were now clouded with pain and resignation, its body barely moving under the grip of a thick, frozen rope that bound it to the tree. The dog's fur, matted with layers of ice and snow, shimmered sadly in the dim light. In that frozen moment, the animal's eyes, reflecting both suffering and a silent plea, locked onto DM's, as if begging for salvation. The scene was almost surreal, the stark contrast of the lifeless, white expanse of snow against the dark, desperate figure of the dog, and the solemn, almost sacred stillness of the forest that bore witness to this quiet tragedy. DM's own memories stirred, echoes of past losses and moments of isolation, and in that instant, the call to help was overwhelming. She could feel the weight of years of solitude and the unspoken bond with every living creature that had ever known pain and abandonment. Without a moment's hesitation, DM knelt beside the shivering animal. Her weathered hands, marked by a lifetime of both hardship and tenderness, reached out to gently stroke its head, as if to assure the forlorn creature that it was no longer alone. The forest around them, once an indifferent observer, now seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating the small yet profound act of compassion that was about to unfold. In that silent exchange, a story of resilience and the transformative power of kindness was quietly being written, a story where the simplest act of caring could defy the cruelty of nature and human neglect alike. The discovery was not merely an isolated event, but the opening chapter of a journey filled with both hardship and hope, where every frozen tear and every shivering heartbeat would eventually lead to the rekindling of lost warmth and the promise of a new beginning. With her heart still pounding from the discovery, DM's resolve hardened like the frost that encased the forest. The pitiful sight of the chained German shepherd, trembling in the relentless cold, ignited a spark within her, one that demanded immediate action. Though the biting wind whipped around her, carrying whispers of the past and foretelling the harshness of the winter ahead, she knew that every second counted. Drawing a deep, steadying breath, DM reached into the inner pocket of her weathered coat and pulled out an old, well-worn pocket knife. The blade, dull by years of use yet still capable of slicing through the hardened rope, was her only tool in this desperate battle against cruelty and neglect. The knife glinted momentarily in the feeble light as she positioned it with trembling yet determined fingers against the frozen bindings that shackled the loyal creature. As her hands began the delicate work, each precise cut resonated with a silent promise of freedom and hope. The sharp sound of the blade slicing through the thick, icy rope was almost lost amidst the murmur of the wind, yet it reverberated deeply within her soul. Time seemed to slow as the final strands of the rope fell away, releasing the dog from its cruel confinement. In that fleeting moment, as the last icy links clattered to the snow, a profound transformation unfolded, a metamorphosis from despair to liberation. The German shepherd's eyes, once clouded with resignation, now flickered with a fragile glimmer of trust and gratitude. Its body, though weakened by the cold, stirred with the first signs of life as it instinctively leaned toward Dim, seeking solace in her warmth. Despite its pain, the animal managed a soft, almost inaudible whimper, a sound that resonated as a silent thank you for the mercy bestowed upon it. DM knelt close, her hands gentle yet resolute as she cradled the trembling creature. "You're safe now," she whispered, her voice a tender blend of firmness and compassion. Every cut of the knife had been a step toward mending not just the physical bonds, but also the deep emotional wounds inflicted by years of abandonment. In that frozen, silent clearing, the old woman and the dog shared an unspoken understanding, a pledge that neither would allow the cruelty of the world to diminish their inner light. The forest, once an indifferent expanse of cold and isolation, seemed to momentarily pause in reverence for this act of kindness. As DM carefully supported the animal, preparing to lead it toward the sanctuary of her humble cabin, a sense of hope began to thaw even the iciest corners of the wild. The decisive rescue was not only a liberation from physical restraints, but also a reclaiming of dignity, a testament to the enduring power of empathy in the face of unyielding adversity. DM cradled the trembling German shepherd in her arms as she hurried through the snow-covered path towards her modest cabin, each step echoing her deep resolve. The cabin, tucked away amid the towering pines and veiled by drifting snow, emanated a gentle glow from within, a beacon of refuge against the merciless winter. As she pushed open the creaking wooden door, the comforting crackle of the fire welcomed them both into a sanctuary of warmth and hope. Inside, the cabin was adorned with worn but cherished furnishings, each piece a testament to years of quiet survival and enduring spirit. DM quickly set the dog upon a thick, hand-woven rug near the hearth, its tired eyes reflecting both relief and uncertainty. Without wasting a moment, she fanned the flames in the old cast-iron stove, coaxing life back into the fading embers until a steady, welcoming heat filled the small space. Gently, with hands softened by years of caring, DM began to attend to the creature's shivering body. She unwrapped the icy layers of snow that clung stubbornly to its fur, using a clean, soft cloth to dab away the cold moisture. The dog whimpered softly as the warmth of her touch seeped into its bones, its body gradually relaxing, as if it were absorbing the comfort and security of this newfound haven. DM murmured soothing words, her voice a tender lullaby that promised safety and healing. "Rest now, my dear," she whispered, her tone both firm and tender. "You're home with me." Every careful gesture was a silent vow, a promise to revive the life that had been so cruelly tethered to despair. She placed a shallow bowl of lukewarm water beside the dog, and even managed to find a small morsel of food that she shared gently. In the dim light of the flickering fire, the old woman's compassionate care transformed the space into a healing sanctuary where every heartbeat was a step toward renewal. As the minutes passed, the dog's eyes began to show signs of emerging awareness, glimmering with a cautious trust. DM's soft, deliberate actions, the steady stroke along its fur, the reassuring smile that broke through her weathered features, spoke of a profound understanding that healing, whether of body or spirit, begins with kindness. In that quiet, intimate moment, the cabin's humble interior became a crucible of second chances, a place where the merciless cold of the world outside was kept at bay by the warmth of genuine care. In the soft glow of the fire, as the night crept in with its quiet majesty, sat beside the recovering German shepherd, whose gentle eyes now mirrored a fragile hope. The quiet of the cabin was filled with a tender intimacy, a conversation without words where two souls, both scarred by loss and solitude, recognized their mutual need for healing. DM's heart swelled with memories as she observed the dog's subtle responses. Every small whimper and cautious wag of its tail stirred echoes of her own past. As she continued to stroke the creature's damp fur, DM's thoughts wandered back to the times when her late husband, a brave soldier whose own battles had left an indelible mark on her spirit, had shared similar moments of silent understanding with her. In that reflective silence, she softly murmured, "I know what it means to feel abandoned by the world, to stand alone in the cold." Her voice trembled slightly, laden with both sorrow and a quiet strength, as if the memories themselves were both a burden and a beacon. The dog, sensing the depth of her emotions, inched closer, its head resting gently against her hand as if seeking the comfort of her touch. In that shared stillness, DM felt an overwhelming connection, a belief that the hardships of their respective pasts had woven an unspoken bond between them. It was as though the dog, too, had once known loss and had borne the scars of battles fought in silence. Looking deeply into its eyes, DM softly added, "You remind me of someone I love dearly, a courageous soul who never gave up, even when the world seemed too harsh." The animal's eyes glistened, a silent affirmation of her empathy, as though it too carried the weight of unspoken stories and cherished memories. The exchange transcended language. It was the profound communion of two lonely hearts finding solace in each other's presence. In that moment, the cabin, with its modest furnishings and flickering flames, transformed into a sanctuary of shared remembrance and new beginnings. DM felt that by nurturing this connection, she was not merely mending a broken spirit, but also reviving the embers of love and compassion that had once lit up her life. The bond was tender, yet resolute, hinting at the promise of healing that lay ahead, a testament to the truth that sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, The universe brings kindred souls together to restore hope and rekindle the light within. In the quiet aftermath of the rescue, DM's thoughts shifted from immediate care to the mysteries that lingered beneath the surface of the rescue dog's troubled past. Once the German Shepherd, now tentatively named Vin Quang by DM, had settled into a fragile state of recovery, she found herself compelled to uncover the secrets of his former life. The faint markings on his collar and the worn-out tags hinted at a story far greater than that of a stray left to the mercy of winter's wrath. Sitting at a small, creaking wooden desk in her humble cabin, DM unfurled a collection of old papers and faded photographs. These relics, long forgotten in dusty drawers, seemed to whisper tales of loyalty, sacrifice, and unspoken valor. With meticulous care, she began piecing together clues. A name here, a scrawled note there, and a symbol that suggested a connection to a distinguished police K-9 unit. Her mind raced with possibilities as she recalled conversations with neighbors and snippets of news reports that mentioned retired service animals, each detail adding a layer to the unfolding narrative. Determined to shed light on Vin Quang's origins, DM reached for her battered rotary phone and dialed the number of a trusted local veterinarian, Dr. Harris, a man known not only for his expertise but also for his compassionate understanding of the bond between humans and their canine companions. Over the crackle of the line, DM explained her discovery. "There's something unusual about him, Doctor. His markings, they suggest he might have once served with honor. Can you check for any microchip or identification? I fear there's more to this than meets the eye." On the other end, Dr. Harris's calm, measured voice reassured her that he would investigate thoroughly. "I'll come over as soon as possible, DM. Sometimes, these animals carry remnants of their past, small hints that tell a story of bravery, service, and sacrifice. We'll piece it together, I promise." While waiting for Dr. Harris's arrival, DM continued her own research. She pored over local archives, meticulously scanning old newspaper clippings and community records that reference commendations awarded to canine heroes. Each scrap of information, though fragmented, pointed to the possibility that Vin Quang had once been more than just a stray. He had been a guardian, a silent sentinel who had protected others in times of crisis. In that intimate space between the flickering shadows of the fireplace and the encroaching silence of the winter night, DM felt a stirring of hope. Every document she examined, every recollection that surfaced, seemed to breathe life back into the soul of the brave animal before her. It was as if, by unearthing the past, she could help him reclaim a sense of honor and dignity long buried beneath layers of neglect. The investigation was not merely about uncovering a lost identity. It was about understanding the profound bond between sacrifice and survival. As the first hints of dawn began to tint the horizon, DM realized that in seeking the truth about Vin Quang's history, she was also confronting the shadows of her own past. Together, they were embarking on a journey to rediscover hope, a journey where every carefully preserved memory illuminated the path to healing and renewal. As the first light of day seeped through the frosted windows of her cabin, DM's careful research began to bear bitter fruit. The fragments of history she had gathered pointed toward a truth she had feared yet sensed all along, a truth as dark and cold as the winter that had brought Vin Quang into her life. With trembling hands, she dialed Dr. Harris once more, urging him to meet her immediately so that they could piece together the final parts of this unsettling puzzle. Over the steady hum of the telephone line, Dr. Harris's voice emerged, laced with a mix of concern and gravity. "DM, I found something. The microchip in his collar confirms what we suspected. Vin Quang isn't just a stray. He's a former police K-9. More than that, he was registered under the name of a man known for his ruthless methods, Mr. Tran Minh." His words hung in the air, heavy with implications. DM's heart sank as she listened. Memories of whispered rumors and old newspaper clippings about a powerful figure who exploited not only his authority, but also the loyalty of the animals under his command flooded back. Mr. Tran Minh was notorious in local circles, a man whose facade of respectability masked a legacy of cruelty and disregard for the innocent. His harsh treatment of both the dogs he once commanded and those who dared question his authority had left scars that few dared to speak of. Sitting by the small wooden desk, cluttered with yellow documents and faded photographs, DM meticulously reviewed every piece of evidence. The microchip data, old commendations, and public records all painted a grim portrait. Vin Quang had served under a man who viewed loyalty as a commodity, discarding his canine warriors once they were deemed no longer useful. The revelation was both devastating and infuriating, a confirmation that the suffering of the brave dog had roots entangled in human cruelty. In a moment of raw emotional intensity, Diem's thoughts turned inward. How can a creature born to serve and protect be treated with such callous disregard? She whispered to herself, the words heavy with sorrow and outrage. Her mind replayed the images of the helpless dog, bound by an icy chain, and she could no longer view his plight as an isolated tragedy. It was part of a larger, systemic abuse, a legacy of exploitation perpetrated by a man who cared little for honor or compassion. Determined not to allow the darkness of this truth to continue unchecked, Diem resolved that Vin Quang would never again be a pawn in a cruel game. The realization ignited within her a fierce protectiveness. She understood that reclaiming his dignity meant confronting and erasing every trace of that brutal past. With steely determination, she prepared herself for the difficult decisions that lay ahead, a path that would involve not just mending a wounded soul, but also challenging the powerful forces that had once sought to break it. In that hushed, candlelit room, as the world outside braced against the chill of an unforgiving winter, Diem's heart throbbed with a newfound resolve. The dark truth had been unmasked, and with it came the promise of justice, a promise that the courage and loyalty of Vin Quang would be honored, and that his future would be built on a foundation of compassion, far removed from the cruelty of his past. Faced with the crushing weight of the dark truth, Diem realized that safeguarding Vin Quang's future required an act of daring defiance, a choice to sever the remaining ties to a past steeped in cruelty. With trembling determination, she resolved that she would never again allow this loyal soul to be exploited by the oppressive forces of his former master. The revelation of Mr. Tran Min's ruthless legacy ignited a fire within her, compelling her to take bold action despite the looming risks. In the dim light of her cabin, Diem meticulously prepared for the next step. She gathered the essential tools, a set of delicate instruments provided by the compassionate Dr. Harris, whose calm assurance had lent her strength in the face of adversity, and a notebook filled with every scrap of evidence that chronicled Vin Quang's heroic past and the dark details of his previous life. Every piece of information was a reminder of why this moment was so crucial, a chance to reclaim dignity and rebuild a future free from the clutches of cruelty. As the clock ticked steadily, Diem sat at a sturdy wooden table scarred by years of use, her eyes fixed on the small device that held the key to erasing the microchip data, a symbol of Mr. Tran Min's inhumane control. Her hands, though weathered and marked by the passage of time, moved with a surprising steadiness as she coordinated with Dr. Harris over the phone. Their conversation was filled with technical terms and quiet reassurances, a dialogue that bridged the gap between despair and hope. "You must understand," Diem said, her voice firm yet laced with the weight of her emotional burden. "I cannot let this shadow of abuse define his existence any longer. I choose to defy the cruelty that has marred his honor." Her words resonated in the silent room, merging with the soft hum of the equipment as Dr. Harris began the delicate process of disconnecting Vin Quang's microchip from the system. In that charged moment, as the digital signal's word and the microchip's data was methodically wiped away, Diem felt an overwhelming surge of empowerment. Each beep from the device marked a small victory against the tyranny of the past, a defiant stand for compassion and justice. The process was both technical and deeply symbolic. It was an act of reclaiming not just a lost identity, but the very essence of what it meant to be cherished and free. With the final confirmation that the data had been completely erased, a wave of relief mingled with the residual tension of uncertainty. Diem leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment of quiet reflection. The risk was enormous. The repercussions of defying a powerful man like Mr. Tran Min could be dire. Yet, the alternative, allowing history to repeat its cycle of abuse and neglect, was unthinkable. Her inner resolve crystallized into a vow. Vin Quang would never again be a pawn in someone else's game. This decision, born of love and unwavering courage, marked a turning point in their shared journey, a decisive stand against the forces of cruelty that had long cast their shadow over both their lives. In that intimate, candlelit space, Diem not only secured a future for the brave German Shepherd, but also rekindled her own belief in the transformative power of compassion and resilience. As the pale light of early morning began to dissolve the lingering darkness, Diem prepared herself for what she knew might be the final test of her newfound resolve. Outside her humble cabin, the winter wind still howled, but within her heart, a determined warmth had ignited, a defiant promise that cruelty would no longer reign over the life of the rescued German Shepherd. It wasn't long before the silence was broken by the sound of crunching footsteps on the frost-hardened ground. Emerging from the swirling snow was Mr. Tran Min, His presence as chilling as the winter itself. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the area until they locked onto DM and the steadfast figure of Vin Quang. With a sneer curling his lips, he demanded the return of the dog he once claimed as his own, expecting to reclaim what he considered his property. But DM, standing at the threshold of her cabin, radiated an unyielding strength. Her gaze, resolute and unwavering, met his with a silent declaration of defiance. In a clear and steady voice she spoke. This dog is not yours to control. I will not allow cruelty to persist in my care, and I will protect him, no matter the cost. Her words carried the weight of countless untold hardships and the fierce determination to ensure that no shadow from the past could ever encroach upon the sanctuary she had built. For a tense, breathless moment, the world seemed to pause. The cold air held its breath, as if the very elements acknowledged the gravity of her stand. Mr. Tran Min's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and disbelief, but the unbreakable bond between DM and Vin Quang was unmistakable, a connection forged in adversity and nurtured through every act of kindness. Unable to match the strength of DM's conviction, he slowly retreated into the swirling mist of the snowy morning, his threats lingering like echoes in the distance. As the door of the cabin closed behind him, a sense of profound relief washed over the space, a silent affirmation that the dark chapters of the past had finally been sealed away. Inside, the warm glow of the hearth enveloped them as DM gathered Vin Quang into a tender embrace. In that precious moment, surrounded by the gentle flicker of the fire and the soft murmur of the wind outside, the scars of yesterday began to mend. There was a palpable promise in the air, a quiet yet unyielding hope that the trials of the past would give way to a future defined by resilience, compassion, and the transformative power of love. In the light of that new dawn, DM and Vin Quang embarked on the next chapter of their journey, a chapter where every challenge would be met with courage, and every moment of warmth would serve as a testament to the enduring spirit of those who dare to defy cruelty with kindness. In the quiet aftermath of this heartfelt journey, the story of DM and Vin Quang stands a powerful reminder of the transformative strength of compassion and courage. Their journey, from a frozen forest where despair once reigned to a warm haven of hope and resilience, teaches us that even in the darkest of times, one kind act can ignite a spark of change that reverberates far beyond the confines of our own lives. Let this story be an invitation for all of us to look beyond the surface of everyday life, to notice the silent cries for help around us, and to respond with empathy and action. Whether it's offering a warm hand to someone in need, advocating for the voiceless, or simply spreading kindness in our communities, every small step has the power to transform pain into hope. I call on you to join this movement of love and resistance against cruelty. Share this story, volunteer your time, support local shelters and rescue organizations, or even consider fostering an animal in need. Together, we can create a world where every life is cherished, every voice is heard, and every act of kindness paves the way for a brighter, more compassionate future. Let's stand together, defy the shadows of indifference, and be the light that guides others toward a new beginning.